Thanks for joining us on Into the Weeds. Today, we are going to get our 2 cents in on the Epstein controversy, which seems to be just a coast to coast conversation that everybody is having right now. If you've been under a rock and you don't know what the Epstein conversation is about, Jeffrey Epstein, the horrible person who apparently ran a child trafficking sex ring, was arrested and incarcerated a number of years ago, 2017, 2018, something like that.
Yeah.
And apparently there's information that the FBI and the CIA, the alphabet agencies, have about who was involved with him. That information has yet to come to light. So let's talk about what the furor seems to be is that both sides seem to be clamoring for a release of the Epstein files.
Right.
And that
And again, the
means
Epstein
the
files.
Epstein files. So I'm gonna let Phil talk for a little while about what the Epstein files actually are, and then whether or not it's a good idea to release them to the public. And then I'm gonna come back after he's done and talk a little bit about my side of things. So take it away, sir.
Okay, so right, so everybody keeps using this phrase Epstein files, and I think it's really important for everybody to understand what that means because sort of sounds like it's like there's a file on a desk somewhere,
It's
and
like a
that's really
cabinet full of
yeah, right,
information, right?
exactly. Right before the Edmunds file or whatever. Anyways, Epstein files refer to all of the material that was collected by the federal authorities during their investigation of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, the two people who everybody's been talking about. But here's the thing about investigations, or investigations are wide ranging. They sweep up all kinds of information, some of which may be true, some of which is uncorroborated, some of which might not be admissible in a court of law. And so the FBI, for example, will do an investigation and they'll talk to all kinds of people. And people may say things about the people being investigated, but there's no way that what they say could ever be admitted into court of law because it might be hearsay. It may have nothing to do with the charges or whatever. So the job of a prosecutor is to sift through all of that information that's been collected and gathered and then determine what can be corroborated, what can be lawfully introduced into a court of law, right? The Epstein files refers to, when I'm using that term, and I think Jubal and I are on the same page here, includes all that information that was collected, not just a subset of evidence that could actually be used in court. Okay, so again, that includes hearsay, that includes people who lied under oath, that includes speculation, that includes innuendo, anything they scooped up.
So
Go ahead,
let's
Jubal.
let's let's just differentiate it. Let's say that it's actionable information. So this is information that actually could be used in a court of law, and non-actionable information, which is information that either hasn't been verified or corroborated, hasn't been proven. We don't know that it's true, or has actually been disproven. Right? There's going to be information in the files
Sure,
that's that
100%.
that is not correct, and we know that it's not correct. So there's actionable information and there's non-actionable information, and the files contain
All of that.
all of that, probably significantly more non-actionable than actionable. Okay, go ahead.
100%. And let me give you guys an example of what I was talking about. There, on the news, they reported this. I forgot where I saw it. This young lady who was apparently one of Maxwell and Epstein's victims talked about how one night she went to Epstein called her to his office. And when she got to the office, Donald Trump was there. And according to her telling of the story, she comes in, she's in her running shorts. Donald Trump gives her the up and down, checking her out. And then Jeffrey Epstein says, no, 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 she's not here for you. Right now, people who think that Donald Trump is guilty of something, they're like, there you go. There it is. More
Mhm.
evidence. There's no way that could ever be introduced in a court of law. There's no way that that would ever qualify something. He didn't do anything to her. He didn't say anything to her, nothing. And so that's the kind of thing. So I just want you all to think about the fact there might be an investigation about something at your workplace or something, and people say all kinds of stuff, and maybe they say stuff about you, and maybe it's not true. Would you want that released?
Hmm.
And that's what I'm getting to. So the Epstein files should absolutely not be released, right? And we'll talk about who's asking for them to be released and why they should be released. But if the federal government has evidence that a crime has been committed, it should present that evidence to a grand jury and seek an indictment. That's the process. If the grand jury is convinced and it returns an indictment, then that information can be made public. Not a problem, right? But releasing investigative material that is neither corroborated nor admissible in a court of law is irresponsible and it's dangerous. And encouraging the federal government to do that is reckless. Now, I know, so Jubal, did you want to add?
Yeah, let me add something.
Go
So
ahead.
the investigation that's happening right now into Comey and Brennan, right? I think is a good analog of this investigation. Now, I don't know who leaked the information. I don't know if you know who leaked the information, right?
No,
It came out of the Department of Justice. It was probably, somebody who is relatively high up, but not at the top of the pyramid, right? So I don't know. That's just conjecture. I don't know who released it, but what I do know is that it was not good to release that they are under investigation, right? That was not smart. Whoever did that made a mistake. Not only is it a tarnishing of the reputation of these two guys, but it gives them a heads up, right? Like if your goal is to convict criminals, why would you give them months and months of warning before you indict them, right? So that they can start getting their ducks in a row and all that kind of stuff. It's actually counterproductive to start releasing information like that if your goal is to convict people of crimes they've committed, right?
right. If you want
So,
to try them in a court of law, if you want to try
right.
them in a court of public opinion, maybe it makes sense.
And
But
and
that's
and
exactly when DOJ was asked about whether there was after the leak, was there an investigation? The proper answer to that question is always the same. I can neither confirm nor
right.
deny an investigation has taken place. This also goes back to James Comey and when they decided not to press charges against Hillary Clinton, but James Comey did as a public announcement talking about how she was reckless and irresponsible, but that there was a unanimous agreement among prosecutors that she behaved in a way that was unprofessional or whatever. That's not what you want the federal government to do. If they have the goods, if they have the evidence, put it out there. You either put up or you shut up, is the rule. And
Right.
that's how it should be done. And the same thing is true. I know some of the people on the left who listen to our podcast would love the files to be released. But just keep in mind that once the federal government can release uncorroborated, potentially false, hearsay information about people and attack their character in that way, um, I want you to imagine that power in the hands of the wrong person. Um,
Especially in a case like this, because the you like getting indicted for, let's say, embezzling. Okay,
right.
that's bad, right? Getting indicted for, voter interference or whatever, okay, that's bad. But getting in child for child sex trafficking, your
Right.
career is over, your social relationships are over. Like that's not, even if you're
And
not guilty, right?
right. And just having your name associated with
Right.
it. Right. And so my way of thinking about it is sort of the why some Republicans want it released and why some Democrats want it released. And I quite honestly I haven't heard anybody say what Jubal and I are agreeing on, which is what everybody should be saying, quite frankly. So the Republicans want the Epstein files released because they believe the files are going to reveal this deep state conspiracy designed to protect this cabal of pedophiles who are in positions of power and influence. From my way of thinking, this is Pizzagate revisited, right?
Mm.
This is QAnon revisited. This is like crazy stuff. But here's the thing, and I haven't heard anybody ask this. If this cabal truly existed, then why didn't the Department of Justice under Trump pursue more convictions, because Jeffrey Epstein was arrested when Donald Trump was president. Ghislaine Maxwell was tried and convicted when President Trump was president. If there was evidence of a cabal, why would they have ignored it? On the other
Mhm.
side, Democrats want the Epstein files released because they're convinced that Donald Trump's name is going to be mentioned over and over again.
Right.
Okay, maybe it is. But if there was evidence of wrongdoing that could be proven in court, why wasn't Trump charged during the Biden administration? Neither administration decided to prove charges, to bring charges against anybody else. So one, yeah, could it be a deep state conspiracy? Perhaps. Or perhaps more likely, there's simply not enough evidence to secure a
Actionable
conviction.
information. There's not enough actionable
Exactly.
information, right?
Next, the idea of having Ghislaine Maxwell testify before Congress is just absurd. And I know this is a discussion that's been going on. But one of the things we already know, I mean, there's apparently some negotiations going on about giving her some limited immunity, right? From everything that I've heard, and mostly this is from the interviews of the women who were victimized by Epstein, she wasn't just Maxwell's associate. She was the mastermind behind this. She was the one who went out and actively recruited these young ladies. And then when they were raped and sexually assaulted, she participated in it. She's not some innocent victim that some people are trying to portray her to be. I heard one of the young ladies who was a victim called her a monster. So
Hmm.
the idea of giving her immunity is just absurd. The idea of pardoning her would be even more absurd, right? And so, um, look, I have not tried to hide my disdain for Donald Trump on these podcasts. I don't like the guy, but I don't hate him more than I love due process and the rule of law. To me, Democrats should stop calling for the release of the Epstein files, even if it might score political points.
Mhm.
It is not responsible. And so I know that's not a popular view, but to me, it's important to stick by the rule of law all the time. So many of my friends, my fellow progressives, have been talking about the lack of due process when it comes to undocumented immigrants. Due process only matters if it's always applied. Everybody gets due process, everybody. So
Even Donald Trump, right?
even Donald
So
Trump.
you either believe in rule of law or you believe in rule of the mob. That's it.
Right. And if you believe in selective due process, then you don't believe in due process.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's what
So
it boils down to.
agreed,
I
100%.
so I think let me talk a little bit about what I think is going on. I think that I think everybody's really frustrated because you have a situation here where it's very clear there were a lot of young girls who were victimized for profit, right? That the people who were victimizing them benefited from that victimization. That there were other people who benefited from that, uh, um, and we feel paralyzed. We feel like we can't take action. We feel like we can't find out who the hell did these terrible things and bring them to justice. And that's not satisfying, right? It's just not. It's not. But there's a right way and there's a wrong way to seek justice. That's it. That's all there is to it. And either we all commit to seeking justice the right way or we don't, right? The first rule, I mean, this is something Phil and I have talked about before, though. I mean, the whole idea of being an American is that we all follow the same rules. That's what it means to be an American, right? The rule book is what makes us all Americans. It's not our hair color or our skin color or our genealogy or anything like that, where we come from. It's that we all follow the same set of rules. And the first rule is everybody follows the rules. That has to be the first rule, because if that's not the first rule, then it doesn't matter what the second rule is. Right? So
100%.
that's where we're at with this thing. I also think that we're living through. So it's not just that we're all unsatisfied. We all know that there's people that are going to get away with it, right? And that really sucks. but we're also living in a political moment where um, it's chic to really hate the other side and to really attribute to them horrible motives and intentions and a lack of morality. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. You know that there are people in your party that are doing that. That's unfortunate, but that's kind of where we are. And so those two forces, I think there are a lot of people out there basically who benefit from stirring up this unhinged desire to just release information irresponsibly. They
Right.
get clicks from it, right? They get views from it. They Everybody thinks their article has a hot take, and they're really cool for saying it. So there's a lot of that going on, but we just we just have to be smarter than that. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Now, Jubal, maybe you can provide some insight on this. Um, as you know, I'm not a regular viewer of Joe Rogan, right? Um, but he's talking about Cash Patel and Dan Bongino.
Hmm.
Prior to the election, they were among the most vocal sort of proponents of the idea of this like ball of people who are, trafficking in kids, and how when they got in power, they were going to go ahead and they were going to expose the whole thing. Then, once they were in positions of power, right, that's when Pam Bondi originally released a set of files to Republican influencers, but it was all public information. I mean, made a big deal out of it. They were showing the Epstein Files Part One. They were all holding up
Sure.
pictures of it,
The binders,
right?
right?
It turned out, yeah, the binders. Oh, more binders. We should not be talking about binders. Oh, is my computer? Is it shaking? So uh, Cash Patel and Dan Bongino were like some of the foremost, advocates of releasing the files, and Pam Bondi actually did create these binders that they made a big deal about it. They shared them with Republican influencers that but it turned out that the information was all information that was already publicly revealed, and so there was nothing, no there. And that's why people kept pressing Bondi and Patel and Bongino to go ahead and release the rest of the files. And then at some point in time, they just announced there's no there.
Hmm.
And when Joe Rogan was talking about it, he was talking about um, being gaslit. That was his description, that being gaslit by Patel and Bongino and Bondi, that there's no there. And to me, I thought, no, you were gaslit before.
Hmm.
The gaslighting happened when they were talking about these files that they knew were there that had all this information. Um, why have um, Trump supporters been so, or why are they clamoring? Why has this created a split among Republicans that we haven't seen before? Donald Trump has done some things that I found objectionable. The base always seems to go along with them, but on this one, it seems like the as much as he tries to make it go away, it's not going away. Why do you? And I know you're not in league with these people all the time, and I don't want to put you in a position of
In lockstep. No, I'm
right,
not.
right,
So just a couple things real quick. I would say, first off, I think a lot of people are of the mind that the reason that nothing happened in the Epstein case for 40 years is because the Biden administration was covering it up. So now that Trump is in power, we're ready to get those files out there and start naming names, right? But all of a sudden, nobody's saying anything, and they're like, "Oh, you promised us you were going to do this." I think that more than likely, what happened is Bondi and Patel, and as far as Bongino is concerned, I think he's way outside his lane. Like he's coming out and he's questioning Pam Bondi, and demanding that the files be released and threatening to resign. It's like, resign, dude. Go then.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't make me choose between you and Bondi because I need a choice, right? So I don't know what his deal is, but he's feigning moral outrage, or saying that we've got to release all this information. And it's like, no, you should be morally outraged that anyone is considering releasing all this information before any kind of indictment. That's crazy. So and I think that the same thing is happening on the left, in the sense that they think that Trump now is trying to cover this up. The reason that he's not releasing the Epstein information is because he's got a starring role in the
Right.
conspiracy, right? So it's both sides are doing the same thing, man. So I don't know. But with both sides doing the same thing, I don't know how to I don't know how to overcome that. Again, I think we just have to put our heads down and just try to be smarter. What
Right.
was
There
your?
were two more things that happened that I thought were problematic again politically. Um, One was what Speaker Johnson did. So, for those of you who don't know this, there in the House of Representatives, there's something called a discharge petition. This is going to get a little bit into the weeds, but basically, the Speaker of the House runs the House of Representatives. And if the Speaker doesn't want a vote to take place on something, you can just prevent it from happening. And the only recourse that the members of the House have is to do what's called a discharge petition. If a majority vote in favor of taking a vote, that basically can override the speaker. But since the parties generally stick together, whichever party is in the majority generally prevents discharge petitions from happening. But since so many of Trump supporters in the House are calling for the release of the Epstein files, and since every Democrat wants to release the Epstein files, including, by the way, the people who are lawyers and should know better,
Hmm.
but leaving that aside. Um, so, what Mike Johnson did, Speaker Johnson did, is he recessed the House 5 weeks early because he knew that if there was a discharge petition sent around, it would get enough votes and the House would call for the release of the Epstein files. Um, that just seemed like a dumb move. Like, I
Well,
guess
okay,
he was
so
really stuck in between a rock and a hard place.
let me say this. It sounds like what you're saying is he did the smart thing.
I don't know that he did the smart thing because what it means is that these members of the House are now going to go back to their districts
Hmm.
and have to explain why they didn't get why the Epstein files aren't being released. I think it's just going to make the people who are already upset more upset because
Hmm.
it's like this is what we voted you for. So I feel like he threw all his members under the bus in order to avoid a painful vote. The reality is if the House votes to release the Epstein files, I'm not sure that they're allowed to do it anyways.
Hmm.
A court has to do that, right? And so it would have been symbolically embarrassing. So I don't know that it was the right thing. I think he was faced with two difficult choices. Um, it just seemed
Well,
problematic.
if what we're
Go ahead.
saying is that the responsible thing is not to release the files, and he took, extra measures to make sure that the files weren't released, then that sounds like he's doing the right thing. I heard everybody's got, you know, theories that they've heard from people, right?
Right.
One of the theories that I heard, and I'm not saying that I believe it. I'm saying it doesn't matter what I believe, right? It doesn't matter what you believe. The rule of law is the rule of law. That's what I'm trying to say. However, I did hear that there's a possibility that there's some kind of intelligence value to this investigation, in the sense that foreign adversaries may have been involved, and so there may be some CIA information that they don't want to have released, or it could be just a situation, like I said before, where they don't want to give a heads up to people that are going to be investigated, that they're going to be investigated. I mean, that really is, to me, a good enough reason by itself to not release the files.
Yeah, and that, so I
So
don't I, I don't think there's any disagreement that um, between you and I. I think like three other people in America agree with us, right?
and that's
Um,
remarkable to me, because I think, and you think, that we're correct,
oh
that
yeah,
this
yeah.
is that this is the correct way of doing things, The
As
rule
a
of
matter of
law is
fact,
important.
if
And
somebody out there, and especially if somebody is a lawyer or somebody wants to make the argument for why they should be released, come on, email me or get in touch
yeah,
with Jubal,
please tell
and
us how we're
we'll
wrong.
and we'll be happy to let you have your say on this. So that was the one thing. The second thing that was really odd is Todd Blanche going and interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell.
Hmm.
Now, so Todd Blanche, for those of you who don't know, is the deputy attorney general, not the attorney general, the deputy, so second in command. And in the Department of Justice, the attorney general looks at the big picture. The the deputy attorney general basically runs the place, right? He's like sort of the one who handles everything that's going on. Everything that Todd Blanche can't handle gets kicked up to Pam Bondi, but his job is to make things not rise to her desk when he can.
Hmm.
But the idea that he would go and meet with Ghislaine Maxwell is deeply problematic to me. The only people who should have been interviewing her, if they wanted to find out more information, what did she know about who else would be involved? It wouldn't be the deputy attorney general. It would be the prosecutors who, who successfully tried and convicted her. People who have read through
Hmm.
all of her depositions know everything that she
Right.
said under oath. When she says something, they would be the ones who would say, that's not what you said before, right? Those should have been the people who spoke with her. And there should have been a team of people. But the problem is that the lead prosecutor was fired a few days before Blanche went in. That's Maureen Comey, uh, related to James Comey. She was the one who was the lead prosecutor that got her secured the conviction. Right? There were other people who were involved. Apparently, Todd Blanche headed this up. To me, that is deeply, deeply problematic. And I think that we might hear more about that later on,
Hmm.
especially if he was the only one in the room. There's no way the deputy attorney general should have been uh, talking to her in any way whatsoever. That's just not his job. And the fact, people make a lot of the fact that Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's uh, personal attorney. You know, I think attorneys can wear more than one hat. You get a job, you're working for the government, and all that. Um, but it just raises all kinds of problems. Like when he's going in that capacity, is he going there representing the interests of Donald Trump, or is he going there, representing the Department of Justice? And so I found that deeply problematic
Hmm.
as well. So those two things were just the last things I
I
wanted
well,
to.
I would say I don't know if problematic is the right word. Curious, right? Why would a person in that situation want to go and talk to her? That suggests to me that there's new information on the table somewhere, which could tie into the whole, intelligence
But
angle.
he
But
wouldn't be the person to be able to know what new information
I
was.
yeah, I to me it's like I don't want to get into the whole circle of suspicion, right? It's like this is not this is not our job. The job of the people that are in these agencies and are in these offices, their job is to prosecute these cases. I would say it would be great if Bondi or Patel or Trump or some combination of those three people would basically just come out and say what we've said and just come out and say, look, this isn't how the justice system works, right? The
Right.
justice system is not like a street gang where you just throw out insults and innuendo about your opponents, right? So again, my thing is either party, either administration, whether it was Trump won or it was Biden, had an opportunity to release all this garbage out all over the American people, and neither one of them decided to do it. That tells me that there's a real investigation happening, which is exactly what should happen.
Right.
So
And I think the fact that there wasn't a prosecution during the Biden administration and the fact that the Trump Department of Justice isn't charging anybody with crimes, I think the more reasonable explanation is that they don't have what Jubal is calling actionable
right.
intelligence.
So getting proof, I think, is the phase that these investigations are in right now. I don't think we've heard the end of Epstein. I don't think we've heard the end of this case. I think there's certainly going to be more to come. You know, that's my opinion. And I don't think anything is going to get swept under the rug. I think we're going to hear more about it. I hope that people get their heads screwed on straight. Maybe that's what Johnson is hoping for. Like you said, he closed Congress 5 weeks early. Maybe he's hoping for somebody out there to start talking sense and people to just calm down a little bit. But I don't know if that's a reasonable expectation or not at this point.
So that's
What it,
all we have to say
that's
for
it.
the Epstein files.
That's it. You know,
And
I guess it's
wait and
basically
see.
just calm down, trust the rule of law, or don't. But if you don't trust the rule of law, then you don't ever get to complain about it again.
And that and also if you empower the federal government and you support the federal government releasing uncorroborated what Jubal's calling about non-actionable intelligence or investigative material, just understand that power can be abused, right?
Severely, severely.
Severe.
All right, that's it for
Okay.
Epstein. Well, if anything develops on the issue, though, we will talk about it again. And like Phil said, if you are a person who understands the law and you disagree with us and you think that this information should be released, please respond. We would love to hear from you. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everybody. Sorry for the video problems.
It's all good.